welcome to Faith and Flavor. We hope you're having a great day and having a great day on purpose. And I know I say that in closing or beginning broadcast, but the truth is sometimes we have to be purposeful.
Yes.
Because we have a tendency to lean into whatever's coming at us that day with emotion. And so, as we're human, but I think that if we understand that we do have a part that we play in the purpose of our day, we can't stop the stuff that comes at us all the time, but we can bring it to a purpose or as much as we can within our power to whatever the expected end is, right? So, like if there was a flooding, I remember one night I got up and I had no intentions of telling the story because you're going to about to find out how much of a girl I really am. But I remember I was laying in bed and I heard something pop, like, and I was like, what was that? And I heard water. And so I run to the bathroom, and from the back of the toilet to the part that goes down through the floor, the little tube thing that's sticking up, water was just gushing out. And I mean, it was like gushing out. And I'm like hollering at David, go cut the water off, go cut the water off. Well, they had changed our meter and different things. So we were trying to find it, and he's back in the backyard because that's where it was.
Right.
You know? And so, and we called my brother, and we're like at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, whatever time it was, 4 in the morning. And he's like answering the phone. He's like, you know, the shut off valve and all that stuff. And I get this idea that this thing is about the size of my high heel shoe. And it's a true story. We couldn't find the shut off valve. We did finally, but in that moment, I literally took the end of my shoe and just stuck my high heel shoe into that pipe that was coming out where water was coming through, and it cut the water off. And then, of course, I had water all over the floor and all this stuff. But, and thankfully, our friend Ron got to come over and fix our floor for us eventually, because when I walked in, all the water was gone in the bathroom. I was like, where did it go? Where did it go? Well, what I didn't really know was it had went underneath all the linoleum and into all the wood and all that stuff. So eventually, the floor had to be replaced, right? But I could have, and that if I'm not mistaken, that was on a Saturday, and we had church the next morning, and I could have been like, no, I'm not going, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing, but, and I could have gotten discouraged in the process and all of that. But I just really went to what I knew, right? And as crazy as it sounds, is I knew my high heel shoe was about the size of that pipe. And so I took what was in my means. And if we're doing that, well, we'll explain that later. We're going to get to this here really quick because this does have to start baking. So I'm going to move these over for a minute. And we're going to put this under the camera. And because I like to give you all a recipe, right? So I hopefully give you a recipe for some spiritual stuff, and then we're going to feed your stomach too. So, but we've got these already pre-done. So basically, this is just pre-cooked turkey sausage. You can get whatever you want. I got turkey for the sake of, well, first of all, it's healthier, and second of all, it's pre-cooked, and I didn't really have to do a whole lot. So, and knowing that I'm the great preparer that I am, I did not bring the rolling pin. So I'm improvising with our sweet relish that we're going to do another recipe.
Stiletto heel. We're going to improvise
exactly.
the relish.
And so we're going to put
great,
this
right?
between, make sure that you put it between so it doesn't stick, right? And then we're going to take and just press this. No, I heard it. It got hot. And then we're going to roll that kind of long. You don't want it fat. You just kind of want to roll that long. And this is cinnamon rolls. That's what this bread is. And we literally just popped it out, and then you have a flat little cinnamon roll, right? So now we're going to take, and I've already heated the sausage for the sake of time because these 20 minutes go fast. We're going to put that on there, and she's cooking. She's cooking.
And we're going to roll it.
We're going to roll it. Yes.
Okay.
That's it. And then you're going to pop it on there, and we're going to pop that in the oven
at 400.
At 400. Sounds about right. I didn't read the box, but we're going to go with it. And we'll have to remember to check that in a few minutes. I'd say probably about 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And if you guys missed the last recipe, it was really good. They said that we're going to have to make that every time.
Absolutely. That was delicious.
So I might wind up making that, and they just have to eat it, and it won't be part of the podcast. But today I want to talk about how the anchor holds and how we respond to the anchor, right? So one of the points is the anchor, it doesn't stop the storm, it stabilizes the ship.
Very good. Very good.
Right. So a lot of people think, well, God's my anchor. I don't have to fight this. But that's really, first of all, when Jesus compelled the disciples to get into the boat to go to the other side, on one of the stories we just covered the last month, he knew that there was a storm coming, right? So did they. They knew a storm was coming. They didn't want to get on the boat. That's the reason why he compelled them, right? That he constrained them to get into the boat. That meant that there was a part of having to convince them to do this because they were fishermen. They knew what it looked like.
Right.
And they knew that they were about to enter a stormy territory time, right? But when Jesus came walking out, Jesus wasn't wringing his hands. He wasn't like, oh no, I've got to walk on this water and save my disciples. He literally just calmly walked on the water. And when Peter said, if it be thou, bid me come, Jesus wasn't like, oh, wait, Peter, wait, let me make sure that, let me get my barrier about me before you start what? He didn't do that. He was not panicked in the storm. As a matter of fact, it said that he would have passed them by. Right? He would have passed them by because he already knew the outcome. He already knew they were safe. He already knew that he was the anchor already, right? And so if we look at the fact that God already has the storm, we're just the ship that's being tossed. So he didn't say, first of all, that we wouldn't have trials. It was when we have them, right?
And the interesting thing too on that is our choices in life determines how much we're tossed about, right?
Sometimes, yes.
So I remember I was going to a hospice patient's house, and every time I'd read over her door, I didn't say it'd be easy. I said it'd be worth it. And that's the one thing we have to really believe, because like you said, in the mornings, we wake up either good morning or oh God, it's morning. Yeah, that's the choices we make.
Right.
On
and
how
we build our safety sometimes. We know that God is our safety.
Well, it's too when Peter took it into his own hands.
Right. Exactly. So, and that's why I say we have some factor in how this storm is going to infiltrate, right? In Easter of 20, my daughter was in the tornado that hit in East Ridge, and she lost everything. And she called me on the phone in a panic, and I won't even go into the whole story, but it was such a panic time. And she was like, "Bah," and I couldn't even understand her. And I finally had to say, Rachel, stop. I don't understand you. And she got the words tornado out, and the phone went dead. So now I'm here knowing that my daughter is in a tornado. My daughter has lost connection with me, and I've lost connection with her. And in that moment, I literally was on the phone going to my mom. As soon as I heard the word tornado, I ran through the door to mom. I was like, Rachel's in a tornado right now. And we started praying. I could have taken that disconnection, stopped, just hit my knees, wailed out, whatever. But I know that I had to pray for the anchor in that storm. And I knew where I had to be grounded and founded, right? And so it came out thankfully that she was fine. They did lose everything they had. But here's the good thing. When she rented the apartment, they bought everything. Everything was brand new. And they had bought everything and just got settled in the apartment in November and in December. And this came in April. And just before that, when she went to rent the apartment, she was a little irritated because the apartment complex rules were you have to take out property insurance. And they were financially not really sure they could afford all of this because they had splurged a little bit more on the apartment. It's the price of things, right? And she had she had won an apartment and she was like, Mom, I don't understand why I didn't get it. The lady said she would hold it for me. She literally had just rented it 5 minutes before my daughter got there. And my daughter, she knew it wasn't my daughter because my daughter was there the day before. She took the application, all this stuff. And she's like, Mom, and she was so distraught. And she said, I don't understand why I didn't get this apartment. I don't know what to do. I said, I don't know why you didn't get it either, but God does. And literally during that process, she was made to take out property insurance on the apartment, which, by the way, of course, you don't really, she didn't have enough to cover everything they lost, but she had enough to cover most everything and the most pertinent things that they lost. All their furniture and stuff she was able to replace because God saw provision even though she didn't see it, right? And maybe she would have been in that apartment. They might not have required the property insurance. I'm not really sure. But I do know that she could stand and, does it look good? Oh yeah, we got a little time. That she could stand at her place and see the place that she didn't get until the tornado came. And then she was there at a place she couldn't even see because it was gone.
Can you imagine if we were shown how many times he's protected us that we don't even know about?
Right.
I used to, because we live so far away from most of the stuff that we do in Chattanooga, I would fret like crazy leaving the house because of the dogs we had. And I put cameras in and I would check it constantly. And then I realized, you know what, if I pray over our home and I pray over each dog, which some people might think is weird, but I do, pray over each dog, and then I leave knowing that I trust in God. But I always remember as soon as I pull in that driveway, I thank him for his protection.
Right.
So talking to him through the day, and I think the biggest thing for you and with your mom too is being grounded, already being grounded. You knew to pray for your daughter, not just rush out the door to go to a place that you probably couldn't get to because of the tornado.
Right. And if I look at the different scenarios all throughout our life, there's been so many times when I've needed to trust the anchor.
Don't mess up your makeup. Don't mess up your makeup.
It's so easy to stand back and say, but when you're in the middle of a storm, when you're tried and you've seen it come to pass that God is your protection, I'm not even going to say it's easier in a lot of the storms to trust the anchor because we're as human as anybody else.
Right.
And sometimes the storms seem so hard and so there. But I know that my daughter's here because I trust the anchor. I know that my daughter's here from her birth because I trust the anchor. I know that my mom's here because I trust the anchor. But then sometimes, like my dad, he passed, right? And I know that most people would say that my dad passed of cancer, but I don't believe that. I believe my dad had cancer in his body. I do know that. But I believe that my dad was just ready, and I believe that my belief is that Jesus entered the room and my dad chose. Before my dad passed, he said to me, Lisa, I'm ready to see Jesus. I've worked all of my life for this. I'm ready to go. And in that case, I believe that there's a sovereignty of God that takes precedent over my faith or over my belief in the anchor because I'm looking at it for a different point of view, whereas God is looking at it in his sovereignty. And I know that when my brother was in a motorcycle accident and he was in a medically induced coma, which was a miracle that he even survived to even be placed in the coma because he had a totally severed aorta. And they're usually gone within 3 minutes. Wow. And he was alive, awake, and talking an hour and a half later with still the severed aorta. And they put him in a medically induced coma. And I remember that he passed away. And I held on and I held on. And I was like, God, I'm not going to let you take my brother. And then finally I was standing in the yard and I said, God, if you want him, if it's the right thing, then I release him. And I told my brother, standing in the yard, although he wasn't physically there to hear me, but I believe his spirit heard me. I said, I release you if you want to go. And within 20 minutes they called and told us that my brother had passed away. Now, my mother was there with him. And there's a lot of miracles even around his dying. But a couple of weeks later, and I might have said it on the program before, but I remember saying to God, God, I'm not mad at you. It's not in my DNA as your daughter to be mad at you because I love you. I know too much about you. I've served you all my life, but I don't understand. And as your daughter, I'm telling you, I don't understand.
And that's perfectly okay too, because I mean, it's not that we question him; we just question, or we just want answers that maybe we don't see this side of heaven. But I think it's okay because if he's our daddy, then we need to be able to go to him with
That's
anything.
right. That's right. I believe that we have the communication with our Father. He already knows what we're thinking.
Absolutely.
So, but I remember that my brother came to me and said to me, I said, William, he visited me. I believe God allowed him to visit me. I said, I don't understand. Yay, they look so pretty. Perfect. And then we've got our trusty little stuff, and I'm going to let her do this because I'm left-handed right now, and I'm not left-handed on the normal. And we're just going to slowly, just drizzle a little bit. And while she's doing that, I'm going to finish the story. But my brother came and he visited me, and I said to him, William, I know God healed you. I don't understand why you're not here with us. And he said, you're right. God did heal me. But when he walked into my room the third time, I just had to go with him. And in that moment, I began to start understanding a little more the sovereignty of God, because God heard my brother. And where I believe that faith kept him here for a while, I know that God heard him and his wishes. And so there's times that the anchor seems like maybe it's old and rusty. But we know that, like I said before, it doesn't stop the storm, it stabilizes the ship. Being anchored does not mean the wind won't blow, it means the ship won't drift. You might feel shaken, but you will not be moved because hope isn't tied to this world, it is tied to the Father and eternity. Overwhelmed does not mean overcome. The Bible talks about when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock, right? That's higher than I. Feeling overwhelmed is human. Being overcome is a choice. When I feel like my ship is sinking, or when you feel like your ship is sinking, call to the rock that's higher than us, which we know is Christ, right? And so even as they thought that their ship would sink and that they would die in the storm, Peter said to Jesus, hey, if it's you, call me.
Right.
And we know that he did begin to sink. But I believe that the beauty in the story is even when we falter, God still picks us up. And he's still our anchor. Even when we're out in the water, he was in somewhat of the safety of the ship, but he had to get out of the safety of the ship to go to the Father.
Exactly.
And have faith even to take. So he did take steps. Yeah, did he get human? Did he start getting overwhelmed? Sure. But then he knew who to call on.
Yes.
And he said, I sink, and Jesus reached down and saved him,
Right. It's interesting too because, real quick, so my father was a lot like your dad. He was eaten up with cancer. And so, being a hospice volunteer, I kind of knew what to expect. But I said to the girl, what do you think? And she says, 3 to 6 months, right? And my father passed away within 1 week. And some of my family was like, how unfair, how can this happen? And I said, here, in my opinion, right? My father was a 30-year Marine. The day that he went on hospice and the day he became more childlike in the care, I believe he said, Lord, I can't live this way. And I thought God was very gracious, right? And being a hospice volunteer for such a long time, it really helped me to understand the process a little bit better. But like you said, you have to be grounded. And I knew exactly where he was going. I mean, we were very blessed to grow up in church like you were. And I even whispered to him, I know you believe, I know, you're ready. And he said yes. So it's being grounded. That's the biggest thing, and realizing that life's not going to come without challenges. It's just how we go about handling the challenges.
Well, and that's even when you pass through the storm. It's not if, it's when,
Yes.
right? The floods come and all this, God has written the end story already. We're coming out on the other side. And in the Bible, when they were in the middle of the sea, literally they were so far off either shore they couldn't go back. They were too far. They were in the middle, so they could. And it said in the midst of the, so they couldn't go back and they couldn't see the shore. They just had to keep going. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I hope you have a great day on purpose.